All right, welcome back. We are Game 2004. That's Game Engines 2 in the winter 2026 semester at Georgian, and it's week 5, part 2 of our broadcast and recording. So, we just finished talking about our stuff from last day, and what I want to do today, I want to get back into the stuff we talked about last week. Week 4, there it is. And I wanted to show you where we were. I'm just going to make a copy of this, like we normally do. There's a lot of assets in this one. You can see that week 4 has like 15 gigabytes of assets, and I'm going to make week 5 have about the same. It doesn't take long for you to do this kind of stuff. One thing that I gave you guys was the kind of a dungeon creator kit that gives you your modular assets. I want to use some of those today, and I want to create a little dungeon with you. Okay, and I want to talk about some stuff that it can do and techniques we can use in Unreal Engine as well as in Blender. Last week we talked about in Blender, we talked about how to snap things together. I'm not sure if does anyone create any of their own assets for you know, kind of like that snap together in their game that they're working on right now for Rise or Level Up? Like, did you make snappable assets, or are you using assets that you downloaded from Fab? What are you doing? Anybody? Just gonna kick this off.
Sorry, what was the question?
So I was talking about, you know, kind of like these modular assets, and that was the topic of last week, creating modular assets and that kind of stuff. And my question was, have you made some of those already before I came to this topic for your interior level that you made for your game for, you know, for Level Up and Rise?
No, I think we've made modular gameplay things that we can add into the environment. Like we have doors that are effectively like replicatable, like one of those, but not the actual environment isn't tiled like that perfectly.
And is this because have you just downloaded your assets from somewhere else, or what is it that you've done?
No, it's mostly just Unreal stuff
Okay.
that we've done.
So it's like stuff within the Unreal Engine itself.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then we plan to get textures and props from external sources as well, which we've already looked into.
Good. Okay. Sorry, I'm just going to go to that one. Yeah, that's what I was thinking about, Gage. That's right. So those kind of assets. So Gage shared a little screenshot. Photoshop's going to have to update soon, I know that. There we go. Yeah, so these kind of things like walls, doors, you know, roof tiles, that kind of stuff to create almost like your city. If you can do this kind of stuff, it's good, and this looks like it's been done in Blender. The advantage to doing that, I'm just going to go back to what we had. We kind of have this from last week, right, where I kind of talked about how to create different parts of your levels, one thing at a time. And this is with the assets that are here. I also, last week, if you recall, we were able to pull in some models. So here's the tile set stuff that we pulled in from Blender. That's like that kind of stuff right there. One thing we didn't talk about was, and I want to make this kind of clear as well, if I pull in like a door, you know, as an example from Blender, one of the most important parts is that your character can walk through the door. Okay, so, and I've talked about this before, but if you actually look at the static mesh, right, for this one, let's pull this over here, and we'll just add this into editor preferences. Remember that as you walk through this door, that it has, by default, when you bring it in, a, kind of colliding, the collider's built in. So let's look at simple collision. So this door, by default, I couldn't walk through. You can see clearly I have a simple collision here. And I've talked about this before, I've shown you this before. But you really need to, when you're bringing assets in from Blender or someplace else like that, remove the collision. So you could go back in here and remove this. Now there's no collision, you'll walk right through it. And this is kind of collision information that you use for physics and everything else. And like I said before, one thing that you can do is, on the right, you can decide to make, simple collision, complex. Now, by default, your collision works with a project. So it says project physics settings, and it says default shape complexity. That's what the collision complexity is, right? The collision presets are here, and we've also talked about earlier in this semester in the other course there that we're doing, multiplayer, how you can make your own collision objects, right? So you can do that as well. So if you really wanted to make this like a door, if there was a special thing that you wanted to do here, you could make your own object. But that's not what we want to talk about here. We want to use this one, which is your collision complexity. And this is where you can change this, where I can say use complex collision as simple. That's not a bad thing to do. And if you did that, because our Blender model isn't that complex at all, it's literally just blocks, right? So complex, when it says use complex as simple, you can see that there's not much to it. It's pretty good. It's kind of low poly as it is. And what this does, it creates a doorway for us to move through. So once I've done that, once I've said use complex collision as simple, that's okay, as an example. And it says block all. And this is a very simple example. But what if it was something more difficult than this? Okay, I'll come back to that in a second. So let me just go back. And I want to talk about, now that I have this doorway, let's bring my character through it. So I'm just going to run the game. There he is, and she's going to run through, and then when they come out to this door, now I'll be able to pass right through. Now this door is not on the ground, but that's fine, right? Whereas before, when I brought it in, it would block me from going through, because Unreal Engine kind of puts together a very basic collision shape around objects that you bring in. So it's something to know, right, of this for this thing. Again, the idea for assignment 2 is that when you make your modular assets, they snap nicely, to your level, and then when it comes to rotating and scaling and all that stuff, they rotate and scale nicely as well. So they kind of, rotate in the right spot, and then you can use them for, kind of your level design, to at least to block out your scenes and that kind of stuff. This is a very basic thing that we've created, but that's what your level should do. But what if I'm in Blender? Let's go back in Blender for a second. And let's do a bit of a test. So here's our test. We're going to use this later on when it comes to procedural content generation in AI. We'll do that probably near the end of semester, right? But let's see when Blender comes up. Here it is. So I want you to try this, okay? And this is kind of the same thing that we're going to do in one of the other courses. Let's delete everything in the level. And let's now think about making something a little bit more complex than that with ground and everything else. And the way to do that is if I press, if I add a mesh, let's add a plane. Here's our plane, right? And with the plane mesh, what I want you guys to do is expand this, right? So that way it's about 5 squares on either side. So kind of something like this. So 5 squares in Blender. If you look at the resize number, it should be 5. So just make sure that everything is scaled up by 5 times. Okay, 5, 5, 5. You with me? So it looks like a very simple plane. What we want to do is we want to go into edit mode. So flip into edit mode, right? And when you do this, I want to subdivide this surface a number of times, right? So again, for people who don't know it, again, I use the space bar. That's how I set it up. So I can kind of search with the space bar. There's different ways of using Blender. So I can type subdivide if I want to. So there's the edge that you can see that that's the case. There's also the menu that you can do that as well, right? We can go to subdivide. That's also a place you can do it. Or you can press the shortcut key, which is subdivide. In my case, it's W. Okay. So if I click subdivide, it subdivides the plane into 4 spots, four little pieces. By the way, You can do the same thing when it comes to creating pre-cut destructible objects. You subdivide them this way as well. So number of cuts, I want you to increase the number of cuts until you have 9. So now you can see that each square is a square here in Blender, all right? And if I deselect all, you can see that this is my typical tile. So this is like a tile object that I want to create. Are you with me? Thumbs up if you're with me, X if you're not, or if you're watching. All right. So I want to now, what I want to do, thanks guys for that, for feedback. What I want to do here is I want to face select areas of my map. So again, if I go Control Tab for me, I want to shift to face select mode. You can also use the key up here as well as a button. So I'm going to click face select mode. And with face select mode, I want to select a bunch of faces, and I want to create almost like a little pathway that I want to go through. So let's select these faces here. You can select kind of faces on both sides. And what I want to do is I want to create almost like a type of bridge. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to use the circle select. So press the C key. C key gives you the circle. You can use your scroll wheel to kind of move it up and down or increase size. And this way it's simple, you just paint the level the way you want. I'm going to kind of fix that in a second. I think I want to do this way here, like this. And then what I can do is I can deselect, is just easier. So I want to kind of do this pattern. So this is kind of one side, and I want to do the same thing on the other side. And I know I could have mirrored, and there's a lot of different things you could do here, but I'm just going to select these, make the circle smaller so I can select these objects, and I'll fix them up in a second. So I want to kind of do one of these, and yeah, there we go. So this is kind of like the area on the plane, and I want you to consider each of these squares, right, as about a meter, right? So that's about a meter squared, for these things. I want you to, now that I have this pattern, this is the place I'm going to walk. I want you to extrude. Up across the z-axis. Again, extrude across the x-axis, the z-axis, and I want you to extrude 1 meter, right? So this is kind of the first thing we're going to do. We're going to extrude up, right? And again, from an extrusion perspective, you can always search for it. You can type in extrude. You can see that there's an extrude faces. So Control F, Control E also does that kind of stuff as well. And there's also, if I look at face, you can see that there's extrude. That's the E key for me. It might be something different for you. And then I will do the same thing. I'll extrude across the z-axis another 1 square, right? So this kind of gives me, the verticality that I want, right? If I want to go further, I can. Let's do one more. So I'll extrude across the z-axis 1 more, right? There we go. And then that gives me the spaces that I want. And this is going to be a place for more of a bridge that I'm going to use for walking through. And what I want to do is I want to delete, create almost like areas that I can see. So these will be the pillars, these thick pillars right here. In the middle will be like little areas that I can see. So I'm just going to select these areas here as an example and delete them. So just delete faces, do the other side too. Right, it's a little bit of work, but it's okay. Not that one. Delete faces, and I'll make the other faces in a second. Again, I could have mirrored this, but that's fine. And I'll do the other side here. Nice and easy. So now that I've got those, what I probably need to make this a little better is to create all the faces that are inside. And so for me to do that, I'm going to shift to edge select mode here. Here's my edge select mode. And I'm going to select these 2 and just make those faces. So make sure you only select 2, or else you have some weird side effects. And all I'm doing is making little windows here really quickly with this little demo. So more of a complex model than just making a door. Okay. Using a floor like this, a floor tile, is actually not a bad idea. There are some positives and negatives to it, and I will talk about what those are. But the main ones, yeah, right here. The main ones are that you have quite a bit of complexity when it comes to UV maps and that kind of thing. All I'm doing is I'm just sealing up the holes here, guys, so that way, you know, when it comes to making this level, that it's, or this part of the level, that I'm just sealing up areas. So again, I just want to make it a little bit more complex so you can see that it's not so easy, and I want to walk the character through as I'm making this piece. And I still want to make it so that it's tileable. So that's something that I want to do. Okay, it looks pretty good. I think I didn't miss anything. Oh yeah, I missed the tops of those ones. Let's do that one. Yeah. I got those ones there. That one's got a top. And that's pretty good. Let's do the other side now. So I got that side, but not this side. So this one here. Might as well do all of them. Again, from a workflow perspective, I probably could have been better in terms of planning this a bit more, which means I would have just mirrored everything. You can also use some really great node tools that are built into Blender to do a lot of this geometry stuff for you, as opposed to you doing it manually like I'm doing here. But it doesn't take that long. Like, I'm talking to it and I'm just doing it, right? So it's not like it's totally long and boring to do. But the idea here is that I'm just sealing up all these areas so you can't see inside. There it is. So I'm done. All right. So that's the first part. The first part is making some kind of bridge structure. And what we're going to do is we're going to use this to tile with. So this is our tile. Okay. So instead of a small tile, we're making a much bigger tile. And what I want to do is I want to multiply this, you know, kind of again and again, right? And we can look at the mirror, the modifiers here. So there's some really great stuff. If I go to generate, there's an array, right? And you know, when I generate an array, you can generate a lot of geometry here by just simply creating an array of stuff. So I can make a very long bridge. I can increase the count. This is basically copying this over and over again, and it'll increase or replicate this geometry in a bunch of ways, right? Now there are some issues. I can see that, for example, there's an area here that's missing here, and if I want to make this bridge proper, then where I had the block, which is this final block over here, then I have to make this a window. All right, so let's do that. We can keep the array without applying it, and then you're pretty good. So let's again go back into face select mode and just delete those faces. You'll see how they disappear immediately from the rest of the array, because it's using an algorithm. Oops. Or use an algorithm to do what I want it to do. So again, now one thing is that I need to solidify this little window, and I have this extra flap here that typically I would not have. So I'm going to have an area here that's going to be like, there's going to be some fighting, you know, between this face and the other faces, because we're replicating those things, but we'll fix them up later. So again, I'm just going to kind of go back into edge select mode now and just fix up those areas so that way it becomes the same kind of window that we've seen before. And just over here, and there. Really cool. All right, so now when you look at it, if I go back, I'm not going to get rid of that yet because I have what looks like a repeating area that's like this. Now you could make this curved. There's a lot of really cool things you can do here. We're going to make it very simple and keep it this big. So a bit of a bridge. Now you can make each of these sections on their own if you don't want to do the array, and then, you know, basically clip these together, one thing or the over the other. I'm going to make this like this, and I'm going to apply this. There's 4 sections to this thing. I'm going to bring this whole thing into Unreal Engine. Okay, that's what I'm going to do. So the way to do this, of course, is to go back into object mode here. Here's object mode. And I want to apply the array. Now, the array is interesting because it allows you to do things like rotation, and it actually allows you to scale things up and down, and a bunch of other really cool things. I'm just going to keep it the same for me. And there's also randomization you can use. There's really some great things that they have. I'm going to click apply. Now, when I do this and I go back into edit mode, I have all my actual geometry. So everything is now geometry. It's part of my, as if I created this by hand. I'm going to select all, and there's some overlapping structures now. There's vertices on top of vertices, so geometry's been duplicated in some areas, and I want to merge by distance. And again, what I want to do is if I type in merge, and if you look at merge by distance, right, and again, it's a mesh cleanup, merge by distance, and it'll tell you that I've removed 69 vertices. So there's a lot of vertices that were kind of on top of each other when I did the duplication, and I've just removed all those vertices. When I remove the vertices, I also remove faces and edges, right? So then it simplifies, you know, kind of my model. One thing is that it uses a distance of 0.0001 meters, which means like the vertices literally are on top of each other for it to be removed. But you can increase that size if you have something that you want to decimate in a different way. All right, so this is kind of what we want. UV mapping is very important when we do something like this, right? Because we've taken a plane and we've cut it up in a bunch of places, right? So let's take a look at what my UV map looks like now for this level, this craziness that I made, right? More complex. So if I go back to UV editing, you can see that my UV maps are pretty messed, right? And the reason for this is because of the way I did it. So I could, one thing to do is a quick way of doing creating a UV map is using, like, selecting all here. So there's my UV map. There's no texture right now. I'm just using it like to see what they look like. So if I select all, and then if I go U, I can reset my UV map. So now it's like there is no UV map anymore. And then I can press U again. And then what I can use is, there's a couple of options. One of them is Smart UV Project. So this is one way of doing it. And if I did Smart UV Project, it'll create all of those blocks kind of one by one. Now, because these are all blocks that are kind of the same size, because I've cut it up, then this is okay. But it really doesn't tell me, there's no islands here or anything else. Not really great at doing it. The other way of doing this thing, if you're going to do a UV map, right, is do it by alignment. So you kind of do it by sides, if you will. Now it's very tricky because we have a lot going on here, but let's try it. So here's one thing that you can do. I'm just going to do the one from one side. So I'm going to switch it to, I'm going to press the 1 key, delete all. I'm going to switch it into kind of like the front ortho mode. I'm going to also select the I'm going to go with face select mode like this, right? And I'm just going to select my faces that I can see. So one of these, right? And if I go back into, notice how they're all spread out everywhere. If I go back into, you know, kind of perspective mode, you can see that these faces are not captured. So I want to capture those as well. And I want to be careful on how I do that. But, you know, I mean, there's lots of ways to do this, but I could capture these ones here as well. And if I press Shift and I capture one by one, I know this is kind of crazy to do. I'm going to be careful because if I use the circle select or something else, luckily there's not that many. So you can see how I'm going to do this in a second. What I want to do is I want to form islands, right? So where all of these faces on this side here are something that I'm going to use, here we go, from one angle. Even though you can't see the faces from every perspective, I want them to be the same size. The trick is just trying to make this as even as possible. And I've replicated it only 4 times for a reason. I could have also done this smaller, get the UV maps first. Again, planning is important. And then done the array. That's another way I could have done this, right? Instead of doing what I'm doing here. which is more detailed. Almost done anyway. Just a little bit of work. Doesn't matter. The workflow is whatever it is. Okay, so here it is. So here's the thing. You can see it's all over the place, right? And the reason why it's all over the place is because, well, the way I kind of put it together, right? So only those faces have been selected. And the idea here is that we don't select any faces that you can't see, okay? But only these front faces from this perspective. So if I go back to the one, you know, kind of like the front ortho, and I move it up further so you can see, so it frames, this whole thing is framed in one view, like this. Then what I can do is I press U, right? Then I can select, you know, kind of project from view. When I project from view, it creates that shape. There it is. Take a look at that. Now it's way better. Now the other ones, you know, are weird. And what I can do is I want to capture this shape and move it off as its own island. So I'm going to press G, the G key here, while I have my mouse on this side of the screen. And I can move these way up here. So that's the first thing I want to get. That's like basically this side, right? We're going to do the same thing for the other side, right? These are both this side and this side. They're the same, right? So we're just going to flip it around and press the Control 1 to flip it the other side now. Deselect all. So now I'm going to do the same thing for this. I'm just going to grab my C key and just draw all of this. Right, again, I can't see, you know, all of it, and I only want to see just this side, right? So you can see it's all interspersed everywhere, you know, as an example. And I want to do the same thing for the inner sides right here. So again, I'm just going to kind of go into perspective mode and do the same thing here. I'll try circle select. I'm just afraid that I'm going to get other areas and I'm going to just do more work, create more work for myself. But you can make your circle pretty small, and so at least you can see. I don't like that. But you can make it so that, yeah, see, I don't want to get these accidentally. I might as well just take my time. But the idea here is that what you want to do when you create your UV maps is you want to create these islands. Okay, I'm going to do this very quickly now, so that way I don't waste too much of your time. When we do the UV map and we do it this way, then when we have textures and we apply a material, then the textures and material won't be skewed. One of the biggest problems with students when they make this for the first time is, or they do anything more complex like this, is they create these areas in their UV map that's skewed. So they bring a texture and they're like, I don't know why, but my texture really sucks. And it's because of, you know, you haven't really unwrapped things properly. Again, lots of techniques on how to do that, tons of videos on YouTube as well. But the idea here is that what you want to do is create these islands. And you can see like how much I'm actually capturing. These are the most complex areas, believe it or not. All right, so this is this part, and now I'm going to go back to Control 1. So it takes me back into back orthographic mode. I'm just going to capture the same, you know, so I can see the whole screen again. Just like so, one view, the view is captured in one thing here while keeping everything selected. This is important. And once I have this, I can again, you know, unwrap, project from view, and you can see that it's here. Now they're not the same size. All right, I want to warn you here that this is smaller than this one, and the reason why this is smaller than this one is because my view here, it literally is from view. Whatever my scale is in my camera is the way it is. There's some other options here as well. So this is correct aspect, and it can make it so it's orthographic. There's some other options you can use here as well. Scale to bounds, you can do that too. But I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to pull this out here, and I'm going to put it on top of this one, kind of in the middle, and then scale it. So move it over, and then scale it so that it's about the same size. Again, one thing we can do is we can make these windows smaller. And what you're looking for is to make sure that one is about the same as another. And the reason why I want to do this is because I want to just have the scale about the same size. All right, so again, quick. There's other ways I could have done this. But you can see there's lots of other areas here, and you continue doing that. So basically what you do is you take it from the top, take it from this side, and then what you want to do is capture all this. One fine way of doing this that you can try is if you did it from, let's say, the right side, right? So here's the right side, and I want to capture all of this. I can do something like this where I can X-ray, right? And then what I can do is I can simply just select all these. Now this is going to select front and back faces, but for the most part, my friends really don't care, right? Because what we're doing here is we're selecting all these. So this is kind of another way of doing things. So again, we want to scale it so it's the same size. All the islands are around the same size. Otherwise, we'll get like larger and smaller areas, but that's fine. So we kind of had it so that it was about this small, something like this. And then what I want to do is I want to UV unwrap project from view, which creates those two things, right? And then again, I want to move these so that way they are about scaled the same as the other ones. So again, I'm just going to scale it by eye. Again, you could scale it by taking measurements and a bunch of other ways of doing this. But for the most part, it's about the same. There you go. And I'm moving over here because, you can, these are all things that are aligned. So this is what I've done. I've kind of selected all these faces here. So it's kind of a quick and dirty way of doing it, as opposed to like front and back. So that's something that I've done. I've also done interior faces, because that's what we were able to capture here as well. That's it. All right, so now we got more, and we can do the same things. We did the front, we did the side, and now we can do the top. So if I go to the top view, we want to capture all of this from the top view, and this will capture pretty much everything else. So this is like all of this. And again, what I want to do is use circle select. Here we can select it a lot easier. One thing we don't want, notice how these are being selected as well. I don't want that to happen. So let's stop that and deselect all and go back into this and just select it from the top. So this is what I want to do here. So I'm selecting this, and again, all I'm trying to do is select the faces that I can see. If I go back into this mode here, you can see that we're missing some faces, right? For example, these internal faces are missing, and there's like a couple of them, like that one, that I'm missing. So I can always just go through here and grab all those. And there's going to be some where, my friends, you probably don't care about, as an example, like the ones underneath. Like who's going to look underneath, the bridge, like underneath this area, to try and get what that looks like. If you're really a stickler, you can certainly do that. But so this is like me taking a more complex model and just creating UV islands where the UVs are roughly the same size. And so when we apply a texture to this stuff, then also it won't show as much skewing. All right, there we go. So I've selected all those top faces for the most part. These are them. And now I want to do from the top view, and I want to kind of pull this in over here. Notice that there is one face that is selected on the bottom, right? And I'm not quite happy about that, but that's okay. That's maybe fixing some stuff that we had there by accident. And I think there was a bit of an issue. So let's just pull this in, and then I press UV, right? And I project from view, and you can see all of those now became islands. And these other ones here, by the way, are all the ones that are underneath that you can grab as well. So if I take this one now, let's go back to this. And again, what we want to do is we want to size it with this one. So I'm going to take this one and then move it over. I think they still can be probably aligned maybe a little smaller this time. So just small, make it a little bit stretching. And then again, the right thing to do, which I didn't do right now, which is I could have looked at the scale here, the numeric scaling, as opposed to the way I did it like here. But for the most part, these are your islands. Okay. So there's an island here, a couple islands here for the front and the back, and then these ones right here are all the ones that are underneath. These are like, for example, the ones we don't really care about. These are the ones that are in here. So if you really want to, and you're a real stickler, you know, you can go and collect all those. Okay, I'm a real stickler. It won't take long. It's not that many. But these ones. So these are the ones that are the ones. And the other way to do it is actually do it the other way. Since there's less here than the other ones, we can just actually do it the other way. So I can just kind of do a B select. So I can select all these, which selects all those automatically for me, right? Because see, all the ones that are, all the faces that were incorrect, you know, I think the internal faces, even these ones, the stuff that, and we can remove some of those. Like, for example, I can go through and delete faces that you'll never see, like these internal faces here, right? Because you don't need them, right? But let's suppose we're just going to use all these, and what we want is reverse it. So now we're looking from underneath. And again, what I would do is just kind of do one of these. Then I can press UV, project from view, which creates all these faces, right? And then what I can do is I can take these, and you can see that there's areas here that these are clearly incorrect, these ones. And again, we could probably delete them, but we're not going to do that. And we're going to move these and on top of these ones and make sure that the scaling, it's about right. There you go. So now this is where the texture is going to be. So now what I can do is I can do one of those where I can kind of select here on this side. Same tools. I can use box select mode to pull these UVs in here to create these islands, right? There we go. So then these ones there. And then, oops, undo. Then these ones here move in, right? And these ones here, right? And if you really want to be specifically, we could have done this much different where we did all this piece by piece, right? So I'm going to put them on the map. These are all my islands, and this is what this thing looks like. So now they've been all unwrapped to some degree of goodness, all right? I want to bring this in the way it is. I want to bring it into Unreal Engine. And the way to do this, of course, is to first make a material name. So right now, because I deleted the original cube, there is no material assigned, and that's not good. We could assign the basic material that's here, but we probably want to rename this. So if you double click onto it, or click and click again, as an example, and if Blender doesn't crash on you, this would be very bad if it crashes. Wow, that would be terrible, right? But when you do this kind of stuff, I'm going to wait for it to do its thing. Then when you bring it back into Unreal Engine, you know, you want to make a material that makes sense. So let's wait for this to do its thing, because there's a lot going on here. Questions around stuff for you. Did you do something very similar, like what I was doing? There it is. Just got to be patient. Sorry. So we're going to call this bridge material. So I'm going to actually name it properly. So m_bridge. So material bridge. That's what it's going to be called. That's the bridge material. And I'm definitely going to save my Blender file because I don't want it to crash. So I'm going to go back out to layout mode and then go file, save. I don't want my Blender file crashing. That would be very bad. We'll call this bridge. And I'm going to put this inside of the same place that I had before, which is inside of my project, the blend file in my project, which is going to be here inside of week 5. Here. But I want to export it, and you know, again, I could add textures here. I could test it in Blender and all that kind of stuff and bring it in. But I want to use textures and materials in Unreal Engine. So here I'm going just to file, export, and again, some choices. You could export it as an FBX. That's okay, right? But I find that GLTF and GLB files are way better. So I'm going to kind of export that. And let's get into where I want these to be. So my GLB file, I'm going to put this inside of my downloads folder out here, just like I have this model, and bring it in. So I'm going to export this bridge GLB. One thing is that in terms of options on the right-hand side, so what you want to include is selected objects. You definitely want to have that. From a transform perspective, Y-up is fine. You know, if you have shape keys and other mesh information, I want to definitely apply any modifiers, you know, that kind of stuff. And from a transform perspective, I definitely want to apply any transformations. So before I do this, I'm going to cancel this for a second. And one thing is, remember, when we want to move this thing and use it as an object, then it's important for us to, I'm going to snap this to here. And if I was to look at this, here's the x-axis and here's the y-axis. So it kind of goes this way, right? And I want to definitely snap it here on the bottom left-hand corner so I can kind of rotate it. Now, there's different ways of rotating. I could put it here and you can rotate it or whatever. But I'm just going to, yeah, kind of move it over. So I'm going to kind of do a, use my tools. And again, I'm just going to move it so that it snaps right here. Right, so here's the corner that it's going to rotate on. This is where I'm going to be grabbing it from. And this is kind of an important thing. And I'm going to press the Q key where I've saved all transforms. Remember that quick, kind of apply all transforms, which means now my transformation is right here. This is the pivot where I'm going to use this as a pivot. So I wanted to do that first before I exported it. So again, file save. And then let's do that thing in file export as GLTF. It's going to be called bridge. Definitely put it on the downloads folder. And then let's go back to this. So I don't have any animation. I can uncheck that. Okay. From a data perspective, meshes, I want to any modifiers, UVs, normals, all that stuff. I want to export. Make sure that that's the case. There's no shape key, so I can uncheck that. There's no armature, so I don't need that. Skinning isn't important even as well. And lighting, there's no lighting, so I can really uncheck a lot of stuff. Transform and include is the selected object. So this is kind of what I want to do here. Once I have this and I'm ready to go, I can export GLTF. And now that I got that, I can pull up back down Rail Engine. And I know you've done this before. Let's pull this into my models folder. I'm going to make a brand new folder here called bridge. Here we go. And inside the bridge folder, I'm going to drag and drop that GLTF file. So let's go back there and go to downloads and grab my bridge GLB and bring it in. And when I do, it's going to ask me to import it. I'm going to click on, now a couple of options here. Use source name for asset. It says that. You can look through here for some of the stuff they said. Force all meshes type. You can say what it is. Is it a static mesh? Is it a skeletal mesh? So we could force it, all meshes from this source as a static mesh, right? I'm not going to do that. There's also other things in terms of, so if I double click on the bridge, I go back into that view we saw earlier, which looks like this. And if I was to look at the, the collision, so again, if I go show, and this is the more of an example, simple collision, you can see that this is completely impassable. This is what Blender would do. It kind of basically create, or Unreal Engine would create almost like this big rectangular prism that you couldn't pass through. So this is a great example of where I want to have more of a complex collision model come through here. So question for you guys, what are the options I have? I could do complex to simple. What other options do I have here as well? Anyone else have an idea? Here's what I have, right? So what else could I do? Anybody? I want to make this collision stuff happen, and it really depends on what kind of collision you want. What's the effect I have? Here's something I could do. I could do this like what we did last time, which is I could scroll down and I could go to collision presets, and instead of my project default, I could choose complex collision as simple. First, I'd want to delete the default collision, and then I could do complex collision as simple, and I could do that. The other option I could do is under collision, I could auto convex collision. I can do that. If I click this, auto convex collision, and I click apply, then you get this. This is not also a bad thing to do. Here's auto convex collision. So what this does is it makes it so that you can pass through, but you can see that for the most part it draws a box around this part and this part, but you can't go in there. You can't, you know, kind of go in there. So if you're not ever going to go inside these little niches, right, as an example, then you're good to go. These little cubbies, right? This is another way of doing it. This is kind of a way of really simplifying your collision. If you just want the player to pass this way and they're going to see this, but they can't get in there, that's fine. Let's just remove that collision again. Oops. Let's remove that collision again. So you could do that way. So making auto convex collision, not a bad idea. But the other way to do it is, of course, what we just did, which is go from project default to use complex collision as simple. And now what you have is something that looks like this. And it's not terribly bad. It does have some issues. And the reason why is because it didn't quite do everything that I wanted. Take a look, right? It has all of this. There's a lot of this extra geometry here. And the reason for this is because we didn't triangulate before we left. So what it's trying to do is it uses the geometry that I have and it tries to triangulate it for you. And then so we have these weird, you know, kind of shapes inside here as well. So whereas in Blender, if I go back to Blender for a second, and if I go to back to edit mode, you can see that these are all you know, kind of separated, right? They're all you know, kind of like this. But what you could do with the collision information that you have here is you could again go to modifier, and what I want to do is I want to triangulate. So if you triangulate it, right, then what it creates is it splits all of these quads into triangles, right? And if you were to do this, then because they're already split up into these triangles, then you would, you know, that's how you bring it in, you know, to Unreal Engine. So again, if I was to go back out into object mode, and if I was to apply this change and then go back into edit mode so you can see the models, you can see now that they've got triangles everywhere for positive or negative. Okay. Positive thing about triangles, if you were ever to do this, is that they provide more geometry for you know, for your model, and it kind of creates almost like this. It forces the Unreal Engine to have this kind of geometry in the model itself, this kind of complexity. Realistically, though, what we've also done is created our UV maps are cut in half too. So if you actually looked at our UV map, so if I go back to UVs, they've actually used the same UVs. That's all they've done, and they've split them into triangles, right? And this could present different issues as well. Okay, so that's something that just to keep note of. But let's go back so I can undo these changes. So if I go back into modeling and I undo, you can see that I can go back to my modifier before I had the triangulate and take it off. And so I don't have to apply that triangulation and then back to this. Okay. I could also create for my collision, I could create a shape. I can export this shape itself by, you know, kind of like, see, this is a shape that has like this box here. I could recreate my own boundaries, if you will, by, you know, because really all I have is if I want, instead of Unreal Engine to do it, I could create a box that goes right here on the side, another box that goes here on the left side, and then this way I don't have to have all this complexity as I bring it into Unreal Engine. But for now, what we're going to do is accept what Unreal Engine has given us, this stuff here, right? And let's see what this looks like when we bring it into the scene. So again, I'm going to save this and go back to my interior scene, and now what I want to do is I want to bring this in here and see what it gives us in our little level. So here's my scene, and there's the bridge. Okay, and what I want to do is it should snap because I've made it so it's exactly the size of my model. You can see that I have my control handle where I had it in Blender. This is important. And then I can rotate it across that area here, right? So I can rotate it as big as I want. But let's take some of these models out. So I want to select those models. Sorry. Let's just change speed here. And what I want to do is I want to select this model and get rid of it. So I kind of imported everything at once. Let's actually do all those all the way to there. And what I want to do is I want to take this new model, this new bridge model that I brought in, and I want to move it so it actually presents a bridge for my character to cross and see kind of like what that looks like, right? So there we go. And it'd be nice if we put the control handle on the other side. So why don't we just do that to make it more so it snaps nicer. Let's just rotate this 180 degrees. So let's say positive 90. There we go. And now my control handle is here. And then I can kind of zoom in here and do my alignments, where I want to snap this as best I can to my view. There we go. Now let's see how this looks. Let's see if this is a bridge to nowhere right now and if it works okay. So here I am, character, I'm inside, and then I go to outside and I'm able to go through the bridge. Now here's what I've done. I've made it so that I can go into this little niche, right? And I can be in here. Now the camera doesn't support it. I don't like it. The camera is kind of like not great in this area, but I can go in there if I want to. I can go in there. I can't jump through because I haven't created that geometry, but it looks pretty good, and I can walk through this bridge, right? There we go. Okay, into oblivion. There we go, right at the edge. There's my bridge. So that's how you do it. That's how you're able to, kind of bring in an asset like that where it's more complex, and now you've got an outdoor bridge compared to the indoor, and you can make this thing scaled and everything else that you want to bring. So that's this part. What about materials? So what if I wanted to add in some kind of weird material on this? So here's my bridge, and my bridge is just a very basic material, right? So here's mbridge. Notice that this points to m_default opaque ds. That's the default that it's pointing to. If I was to look there, then you can see that this is an engine material. Here it is. So that's something to note as well. So remember that you could hide and show engine components in Unreal Engine right here. Notice that it's GLTF. It's pointing to m_default opaque, right, material. That's what it comes with, and it's part of my engine, my engine stuff. So what I could do is I could, and it's a material instance, by the way. That's what it points to. So if I actually to look there, double click, here's my default material that this is looking at. So this is like my bridge looks at this material. It looks at this default material. The default material is here. Again, it's an engine right here. And the default material, if I was to look at it, looks like this. Like it's really quite complex, right? So this is what they've given you, right? This is right out of Engine. So it gives you metallic roughness and like texture rotation and a bunch of stuff. It's really interesting to take a look at the stuff that's in Engine, because they've given you kind of a map of how to do certain materials as well. There's your normal texture, and they have texture coordinates here and a bunch of other stuff that you can look at. What they've given you is a surface material that's opaque and default lit. That's what they've done, and everything else is default. But you can see that there's a lot of these. This default body is all this stuff that they've added in, and they just plugged in only the stuff that you need inside of your domain. So they've got ambient occlusion and tangent and normal, but all those other things, there's a lot of them that don't apply to this one. If you were to switch the domain, this is the really great thing about this default material, you would still have all these things plugged in, but these things, there would be less of them. Or, for example, index of refraction right now isn't being used because, you know, it's not a translucent material. Okay, so that's kind of what we're looking at here. So we don't need this complexity at all. And so, but I wanted to show you this to you. So our m_bridge can point to some other material. So I'm going to go back to our stuff. And by the way, if you don't want to see this, on the right, under settings, where, again, you can see show C++ classes, but there's also show engine content. You can uncheck this. And so then now it's not so bad. So back to models and back to bridge. Here's my material. Let's make a brand new material. So brand new material. We'll call this M, because this, you know, this material is actually a material instance. So let's just call it M for now. MI bridge, because that's what this is. So I'm going to rename this. So click onto this and say it's going to be called MI, material instance bridge. So that's what this is going to do. Because we're modifying the material, because it's not a material, it's a material instance. See, material instance. Let's make a brand new material again. So here's my material. We'll call this M_bridge. There we go. And then my bridge material, which has got nothing on it, it's a basic surface, opaque, default lit material that we had before. And then you can add in whatever color and everything else you want. So again, just so I can remember what I would do, I would press the 3 key and left click to add in a base color. So convert this to a parameter, call this base color, and then drag that in. There we go. We can multiply it. We can do all those things. I want to do the same thing for the basic things that we have here. I don't care about anisotropy. I don't care about that as well, but I'm going to just put in the values here for the other ones. So this first one is metallic. Convert to metallic, right? That's what this is. And we're going to leave that at 0. I'm also going to convert this to a parameter, call this specular, and we'll leave that at 0.5 like normal. That's a normal way of doing that. We've done this earlier. This is review more than anything else. Now roughness, it should be pretty rough because it's a wall, right? So for now I'm going to make this so the roughness is 1, and I'm just going to convert to a parameter, roughness. There we go. So pretty rough, and then the other ones would be normal, and right now it's on the z-axis, the normals. Well, we'll convert that to, we'll say, convert this to a parameter. We'll call this normal, and we'll plug this in. There we go. And the same thing goes with, now notice that normal was a, see how this went turned black? And the reason why this turned black is because normal, it should be a 3-dimensional parameter like this, right? That's the normal, because the normal map, that kind of lines up with this one. And again, what you want to do is keep to what it had, which is this, right, as an example. And by default, so this is going to be your convert to parameter. We'll call this normal. And then same thing with anything else. I don't think I want to add in even ambient occlusion as 1. I think I'm going to make that 0 for now. And let's add in a value for AO, ambient occlusion, and drag that in. And I also want to create a group for all this stuff. So the group is going to be called properties. And I'm just going to kind of select all this. There's not a texture right now, so I'm going to put them all in here. So no textures, just properties for now. There we go. All right, so for now, that's what it looks like. And I want to use this for my, my map. Let's make the base color, instead of completely like this, black, let's change that color to like a gray color. So let's something like 0.8 maybe. There we go. Kind of a gray color, maybe even maybe make it 0.5. Here, I'll drag it down a little bit. Quite gray. There we go. Kind of a gray color. Press OK, and that's going to be the default color. Apply and save. And then go into my bridge and point to that. So point to m_bridge. So that way this is now the default color. Save. And you can see the properties that we have access to right here from before are the ones we can use. We can always modify things now, and we have more control than using the other way around. So there's your bridge. Okay. And now if you want to add in a texture, let's say for the color, and you want to use the color as a as a tint, we can easily do that now, because for example what I can do is I can bring in a texture. So let's go back to content, and I want to click on textures, and let's see if there's a brick texture that we can find. We have a lot of them now because we have all this other stuff that we've had from before, so we can just kind of select a brick texture, and there's some clay brick, and we can also bring textures in, but I like this one, cobblestone. That's okay, but that's kind of a floor texture. There's cobblestone smooth, and there's quite a few textures that you should have now in this thing, right? So let's see if I can just type in brick, if there's anything that would work. Yeah. So let's say this isn't a bad brick, a clay brick that I can use, or a stone brick cut. That's not bad. I want to try and use this one. So I'm going to bring this texture in. There's that texture sample. And again, what I want to do is I want to multiply this one to create my base color. So I'm going to multiply, there we go, and connect this one here, and then just simply put that in there, and that would create my brick texture. Okay, there it is. So that's the texture sample. For now, this is the T brick cut stone. This will be the texture, so I'll put this inside of textures. That's the where it's going to go. So I've got this as base color, but this is my brick texture. So let's make this a new parameter. We'll call this brick texture. There we go. And then we'll put this inside of a new group called textures. There we go. Okay, nice, nice. And apply and save. And let's see how that looks now. Is it really bad? It might be, because I mean, we just applied this here. We didn't bring this in the Blender. We have no idea. Yeah, so it's pretty bad. It's pretty big, but you can see that the scaling for the UV map it needs to be scaled right out. But what does this look like for my character? So there you go, and as they walk through, you can see there's lots of repetition, and it's massive. It's a massive brick texture, like crazy big. And that's because of my UV map. My UVs are to the point where they're really quite large, and I want to scale these back out. So who remembers how to do that with, now remember we have UVs right here, right? So this is my defaults coordinates, right, for these, right? So what if I was to go right there, and if I said something like, 0.5 and press enter, for my UV, it doesn't really do anything, because UVs require a coordinate that I could use. So if I go to and if I kind of right click and go coord, so texture coordinate, so that's what I would get there, right? And you can see the U tiling, and there's the V tiling. I can put that in there, plug that in, and if I was to type, kind of type in 0.5 and 0.5, let's see what that does. Is it worse or better? Kind of thing. So apply and save. Because this is scaling. That's what this is, UV tiling. And if I go back to this, you can see that it's actually worse. It's actually even bigger, right? So let's go back and try it the other way around. Let's try a larger number. So go back and let's try these numbers out, and we'll say something like 4, and this will be also 4. So 4 times. That's looking a little better. You can actually see the preview. That's nicer. And then if I go back out and save here, you can see that it's just one big brick. So it's got to be way bigger than that, right? So it's getting better, but it's like more like 40 by 40. Okay, that's much better. You can see that now that's scaled in, and maybe that's too much, but we'll shortly see when we save. back to this, and if I go zoom in, oops, we got a brick texture. There we go. It's not bad, and we did it pretty good. I mean, I use the same texture on the floor that everything else. Well, there was only one material, right? So if I was to export this from Blender and I had if I applied a different material on the floor, like a floor material, I could use a cobblestone or some other kind of tile, a larger tile than what I have here. But my point to you is that it's not skewed terribly, right? So if I was to run this now, it's pretty dark. And the reason why it's pretty dark is because of my material I'm duplicating. I probably want to make this pretty light now, because before what I was doing is I was using this as a gray material, right? And I could either turn it off or just use a very light surface, because otherwise it would darken it a little bit too much for me, for my liking. That's a little better. So now if I press play, again, there's no normal map yet, but if I press play and I walk through, you can see that apart from the ground, that the brick looks pretty good, guys. Like, you know, it's not terrible. It's not perfect by any means. I mean, I didn't really take a lot of time to make the normal maps match too much. But here's where it's weird. And the reason why it's weird here, because those are the connecting tiles. Like I said, I have internal, you know, kind of walls that I probably want to get rid of if I was going to bring this in. Like, for example, notice how this one is culled on this side, but not this side. That's bad. Like, the normal map is actually wrong. But even from this outside, it's not terrible. And there's more work for me to be done. But I mean, again, I think that you know, it's pretty good from a bridge perspective. Also, notice that it actually put it here as well. This is a great way of looking at it. Let's go to show. I don't care about collisions right now. So we can look at this like as like unlit. This is kind of what it would look like here. Absolutely, there's tons of stuff to do, and I think this is why we're doing this. Okay, last thing that I want to do with my material as a review. And by the way, here's a question for you guys. Why do you think I'm talking about materials and I'm showing you how to bring in something from Blender? Is there maybe a reason? Anybody? On your exam, I'm going to get you to do something in Blender, most likely, and bring it into Unreal Engine and use it, right? So that's why I'm talking about materials. We've been talking about materials for landscapes on the outside, and now we're talking about materials for objects on the inside. And I've did a very fast and dirty job in terms of bringing it in, but this is one way of doing it. I want these texture coordinates, because what these texture coordinates do is they allow me to duplicate these for my normal map. My normal map right now is this, and my brick texture, again, if I looked at it, it's T brick cut stone. So I want to look for that. So I want to go here to T brick cut stone. So T texture underscore brick, and then cut stone. There's two. Here's the, I only have a normal map. I don't have any other information. So this is what it is. So I'm going to bring in my normal map right now. And this is going to be my texture. So convert to parameter. So this will be my normal texture for it. There it is. And what I want to do is, instead of this, I don't want that. I want to find a flatten normal node. There it is. So there's my normal here, and this is my flatness, and I want to use that as a parameter. So convert to parameter. We'll call this flatness, because that's what that is. And for now, I'm going to use a small value like 0.15. And I'm going to bring this into flatness, and from this flatten normal, I want to drag this into the this flatten normal. I'm going to drag this into the normal map here, and I want to make this as part of the textures group, and I want to have this as part of the properties group, so we can separate those out. But what I need, because this is all messed up, because you can see that the normal map is different here because we've tiled the UV map the way we did, I want to bring this also in here, so that way we can use the same tiling for both, right? There we go. So apply and save. And then when this is done, we'll have a pretty good approximation of what my bridge would look like. Here it is, with a normal map. That's not bad. It looks pretty much better than normal. And one thing to do is I like to pull out my MI bridge. So I'm going to pull this out here and then go back to my bridge, and this kind of stays on top. And what I can do is I can modify my settings, like for my flatness, and until I'm satisfied with how this looks. So I can kind of, you know, kind of play with these numbers until I kind of like them closer to, there's actually less negative. Again, I think pretty much something like this is good. Maybe 0.15 to 0.20 is probably a good flatness. If you bring it too high, like if you bring this way up to 1, I find that it's actually worse. Now you can bring it, you can really overdrive the normal map, but it looks weird and fake and doesn't look good, right? So I don't think overdriving is fine. It's usually from a 0 to 1. So I like to kind of keep it around 0.15 to 0.2 is what I recommend. Something like that. Start. And then if you don't like that or if it's not enough, you can always move it back. So that's what I would do. This is my only change. And then save. And now if I go back to playing the game, and the key is, let's see what this feels like when I'm playing. There's lots of repetition, clearly, but now the brick looks much better than it did before. But things that you could do to make this better is to use a decal, right, on different places. Start painting it up, which is basically just a texture that you're going to put on with the material on different areas, like almost like a more or less a plane that you're going to use with some transparency, right? Which is pretty cool. So you can see that they're, you know, they can move through the level now, and it looks pretty good, pretty fast, you know, for what we've done. See that the normal map is okay. So reason why I brought this up is because you guys are going to need to pull in something, you know, from Blender. You need to be able to texture it. I will provide some things for you. There'll be some textures, so you don't have to create your own. There'll be enough in the project, the base project for your exam, that there'll be stuff to do. But one thing to note is you want to think about, like I said, decals and that kind of stuff. And we'll talk about what those are next week, how to put them in, how to add them in so they're nicer, and they provide a little bit more detail without you having to go and physically model different surfaces, which would be a big waste of your time. All right, that's it for me for today. Questions around this, and hopefully you found this useful. I'm just trying to give you assistance and give you more things that you could do in Blender to bring things into Unreal Engine for your game, and also for your assignment 2. Questions around this? All right, guys, as always, it was a pleasure. I will see you guys tomorrow at 3 p.m. We'll go from 3 to 6, and tomorrow is multiplayer. So I'll be able to give you all the stuff that we're working on as we continue to build out our multiplayer project for assignment 2. Okay? Thanks so much, guys. I'll stop recording.